Hey guys, welcome back to Tower of God New World. In today's video, we're going to be doing a tier list for the yellow element. Now, I'm going to go through and I'm going to do one for every element. Yellow is the one that I feel the most comfortable with to do first. I also think it and purple are obviously the most commonly used elements at the start of the game. And I think yellow, once you especially get an Evan and if you're going for hats, is probably the most dominant one. So I wanted to do these at the start individually in each element so I can take my time, go through every character, and it doesn't become a 2-hour video of me talking about characters. So I'm going to split this up into the different elements, and then in the future, if we update it, I will just do all elements in one video because this will be here to do the big descriptions. The other thing is, don't just jump to the end, which I know a lot of people aren't even hearing this because they're at the end of it. But basically, I want to explain my positioning as I do them because depending on some characters, hats for instance, I will mention that, you know, if he's got dupes, he's higher. If he doesn't have dupes, he's lower. Whereas someone like Bomb, who is just great at one copy, but he just gets better at more copies and he'll just stay at a high rank no matter what. So let's jump into it. The first one, let's just go into the S tier. Let's not play around. We've got Evan. Evan, obviously, he's the SSR plus, and he's just OP, basically. He's got energy recovery, he's got invincibility, and when you're pushing a high deficit, his invincibility then heals based on damage taken, and pretty much you're going to top everyone off every time he uses his ability at the end of it, plus have an invincibility period, plus he has an energy battery. Like, the dude is completely cracked, and that's pretty much all there is to it. I don't think we need to elaborate on that more. Next up, as we look into the A tier, we're going to chuck Hats in there. Now, Hats is in here as a carry DPS that you have on your wishlist spot, and he has dupes. If you have no dupes of Hats, he goes down here. He just runs in and dies. Hats, you need dupes. You need to invest into his report or his friendship, whatever they call it, where you get him up to evasion, and then ideally you get him up to the accuracy as one as well, because he does have accuracy issues where he misses. So Hats, to get this A rank, needs heavy investment. He is there as a carry unit, and that's why he's in the A rank. If you're not focusing on him and getting dupes and you've been really unlucky, he's not going to perform as well, and you might get away with a different option. But in general, once you get to using Hats as a carry, he is amazing. He can dodge a ton, and because he's dodging a lot, he can also heal when he crits, meaning he can stall out as well. Eventually, he will die. He's not like an invincibility tank, but he can also stall as well as deal damage. Now, he doesn't have the highest damage ceiling, but just in general purpose usefulness as a carry, I think Hats is probably the best in the game currently. Moving on from that, in the A tier, I'm putting Bomb in there as well. The dude is just your energy battery buffer for your main DPS. He is amazing at a single copy. The great thing about him is that he is a ranged unit. The problem with supports that are melee units is they run in and die. The ranged ones are much better because it requires a lot less investment. You don't have to have that report or the friendship to get the evasion up because they can just live in that back row. Yes, sometimes they get sniped, but in general, you just place him there, set and forget, and he's pretty good. He buffs the energy regeneration of your main carry and also buffs their core stats. So he's just absolutely amazing, but as you get him duped up, he keeps getting better because you increase that energy that he can give, which is a fantastic effect. So I think him is at an A. Whether you have one copy, whether you have 50 copies, he just becomes a higher A essentially. Then we're going to jump into B tier. B tier, I'm going to put Wang. Now, I think just on the main focus unit, I think Hats has the wood over Wang. It's pretty close, just because Hats has that additional ability of being able to be a distracting unit in that front row as well. Yes, Wang has an extra life. However, if the rest of the team dies, he's just going to be under heat and you kind of flop. But the one thing I will say about Wang is that he does have good damage capabilities if you don't have the luck on dupes. So say you're in like chapter 8, 9, and you've only got like 3 dupes of Hats and 3 dupes of Wang. Wang actually feels better at that stage because Hats is still at the place where he's probably just going to flop to most damage, especially if you don't have his friendship to get him the extra 100 evasion, whereas Wang's going to deal more damage and not be in harm's way. So that's where I say Hats requires the investment. Wang doesn't require the investment as much, but if you both have them say like maxed or into like orange stars, I much prefer Hats personally. Moving on from that, I'm going to put Gray into this B tier. Honestly, Gray is phenomenal. I think Gray is absolutely amazing. When you look at the fear that she provides, so the first time, she's only an SR unit, and that's the other thing. I'm only putting SRs and Rs in these lists that I think warrant a place on there. And, you know, if I've missed some and we find out that others are OP, I will update that in the future. But I didn't want to just clog like an EFG tier with all the Rs and SRs. But Gray, like as you, and because she's an SR, you will eventually get the dupes. And as you dupe her up, her fear, which is the first time she gets attacked, she fears the enemy, can get up to 8 seconds. And as anyone is just going to eventually get those dupes. I think mine is up to blue star. I got 1 blue star, and so she's at a 6-second fear already, which is quite strong in my opinion. Then she also has a sleep that she'll put on the furthest enemy. She's just a great controlling unit, and you can manipulate the battle to have basically a 4v5 for the first 5, 6, 7, 8 seconds of battle, depending on where you have her limit broken to. I think she's absolutely amazing. Her ult also does decent multiplier damage, but you probably don't have investment into her, so it doesn't really do too much damage, but it also does group enemies, although it's only a small radius. But the main thing she's there for is her fear. It's huge in a lot of situations. Next up, we have Rock. Now, this guy, I'm putting him in B. I feel like without dupes, he's a C, and with dupes, he's an A. But I'm putting him in B to split the middle. Basically, if you don't have dupes and you're pushing a high deficit, and it also depends on deficit pushing. If you're pushing a low deficit, yeah, he can be good. But if you're pushing a high deficit and you don't have dupes, he runs into melee and gets melted. I cannot use him. I have been using Gray instead of him in every fight, or I've been using her. I just have not used him since about chapter 9 because he just gets absolutely melted because mine is only at 1 dupe. If you have dupes of him, that's when he becomes better. He also will require that friendship investment to get his evasion up, because then he can survive. He's a melee support unit. Well, he is ranged tech. He swaps between, but essentially he can get himself killed really easy. So with dupes, I think he becomes good. With dupes and high investment, he comes good. Without dupes and low investment, he's pretty bad. But once you get to a decent, a decent level, I feel like putting him in the B sort of evens out that spread. Moving on from that, I want to talk about the chicken. Now, so Wang is someone I've had personal experience with hats pushing above a 3x deficit. I am very fine with my placement on hats. Wang, I've seen so many people use Wang that I'm happy to have him in that B tier. I think he's great. Like I said, he does tons of damage without the dupes, and I explained that whole situation between where your dupes lay between investment of him and hats. Now, chicken is one I've seen a couple of people build who rate him very high. I don't want to put him, and everyone, the couple people that I've spoke to who have built the chicken think he's right next to Wang in viability, but because I just haven't seen enough of that evidence, and when I try and mercenary a maxed out chicken, it doesn't really work out for me. I'm going to put him in C. Just keep in mind, this one is a dark horse for me. The chicken could end up being better than Wang. Who knows? But I haven't seen enough people using it or building it. So this one, once again, don't rely entirely on this placement of the chicken. It's the one that I feel the most uncomfortable about placing on this list. So I'm going to put it down here just so I don't, make the mistake of baiting everyone into going, oh, you can choose either one, go the chicken, and everyone hates the chicken. I just feel like I'm safer to put it in C, but just know it could bump up to that B tier in line with Wang. I don't think it's going to overtake hats at any rate. Moving on from that, in this C tier, I'm going to put her, I forget her name. She's basically the R unit that buffs the unit with the highest attack at the start of battle. With her exclusive equipment, it also gives crit, but she's also giving haste as well, or whatever they call haste in this game. I always forget what they call it. But yeah, she's increasing the attack speed, so she works really well with hats. I often find Gray more useful than her, but in certain situations where the formation doesn't allow Gray to reliably fear the enemy you want to, you can put her in and just get that boost to your hats, and it works really well. So I think she's a great unit. In certain situations, she's better than Gray, but I feel like in more situations, Gray is useful than her, and that's why she goes into a C tier. Honestly, I use her more than Rack at low investment. That's why I said at low investment, I think Rack becomes a C or a D, but I feel like with high investment, he's an A, so he's going to sit there, and that's where she falls. But yes, if you've got a low invested Rack, try her instead of him, and you'll probably get some better results depending on the enemies. Moving on from that, we have Shibisu. Now, this guy can be amazing. His problem is that he is a melee support and he requires a lot of investment. So he's kind of like Rock in that sense. Maybe he could go there, like once you consider the investment, but I want to put him down there. Just the problem is he runs in and dies instantly. Now, when we look at something like Huarun, or how he's Hua, the new fire chick, who is very similar in effect. He basically makes your team focus on an enemy with his ult. The thing is, Hua does it without using her ult. Also, Hua, when we compare to him, she stands back at the start of battle for about 3 or 4 seconds to mark her target, which means she's easier to avoid damage with because you can let your other units take the aggro. Whereas Shibisu, the problem has, like, if he works, but at high deficits, he runs in too quick and just gets melted every time for me. I have not been able to get him to work above a 2x deficit, no matter how much I play around with it. He just runs in and dies instantly, and I don't think he's a unit that's really worth pushing that heavy investment early on. So that's why I'm going to put him at a C, because I feel like Rock with lower investment is still more useful than a Shibisu. My personal take, once again, you can mix up this B and C tier how you like. It's sort of like the gray area tier. We probably could have put this as one big long tier, but I thought that separation was going to be okay. Then finally we have the assassin. Now, I have a mate who's got the assassin completely maxed out, and the problem with the assassin is that, one, the damage just isn't enough, and two, if you do decide to build this character, don't max it, because the starting energy kind of bones the rotation on this one, because what happens is the ult is the damage, but he's also got an ability where he lunges on an enemy. And then normally what happens, the idea is he gets the ability where he lunges and then uses his ult to try and kill them. But when you get the extra starting energy, he'll ult on the tank and then lunge to an enemy and then just die in the back because he doesn't have his ult ready. So he's a very clunky unit. I'm not a fan. Like I said, I've spoken to a mate who has completely maxed him and just thinks he's, really poor. So I wouldn't go investing in this unit unless we find something crazy strat that someone figures out that makes him completely OP. But that is going to be it for my yellow tier list. Like I said, that pretty long video. I'll do one for each one. I want to go through them in depth as much as possible to talk about every character and the reasoning for their positioning. And then once again, in the future, if we do updated tier lists, I'll do them all in one and just talk about changes and stuff like that. But anyway, guys, let me know what you think. Like I said, tier lists are always subjective. I could be wrong compared to your takes, but please let me know in the comments. As always, thanks for watching. Hope you have an awesome day, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Cheers.